In 1275, maps appeared, fully formed, perfect, with no predecessors, no drafts, no development. One moment they did not exist. The next moment they were so accurate they should have been impossible. These were the portolan charts, nautical maps of the Mediterranean and Black Sea, rendered on parchment. They changed everything about how we think about medieval knowledge. Here is what makes them so remarkable. The oldest surviving example, the Carta Pisani, now held in Paris, shows the Mediterranean with a precision that medieval technology had no business achieving. Medieval mapmakers should not have been able to produce what they produced. The charts that followed over the next century, produced in Genoa, Venice, and Pisa, all share the same impossible characteristic. They appeared with no explanation, no gradual development, no visible stages of learning or improvement. They simply arrived, fully realized, as if someone with perfect knowledge had shown medieval cartographers exactly how maps should be made. And then everyone knew exactly what they were doing. It is as if an instruction manual was distributed across 3 Italian city-states, and nobody recorded who distributed it. This is the mystery that haunts historians today. A Dutch scholar named Roel Nicolai spent years at Utrecht University studying these charts. His doctoral thesis was published in 2016 by Brill under the title The Enigma of the Origin of Portolan Charts. What he discovered was shocking. Using geodetic analysis and statistical investigation, Nicolai measured the relationship between real geography and charted geography with precision. He found a root mean squared error of approximately 11.3 kilometers. For medieval cartography, this was not merely remarkable, it was impossible. Modern cartographers with instruments, triangulation, and chronometers did not achieve this accuracy again until the 19th century, 400 years later. Think about that. Medieval maps were as accurate as modern maps, but medieval cartographers had no telescopes, no chronometers, no tools to measure longitude or latitude precisely, just parchment and ink. When Nicolai tried to recreate these maps using actual medieval methods, averaging multiple observations, attempting to synthesize reports from different sailors, using the techniques medieval map makers would have actually employed, the results were 1,000% less accurate. The accuracy gap was not a small problem. It was categorical. The portolan charts were not products of medieval skill or medieval observation. They were copies of something ancient that medieval cartographers did not fully understand. They were reproductions of a master source, and that master source should not have existed in medieval times. But Nicolai discovered something even stranger. The charts were not single, unified products. They were mosaics, 5 to 10 separate overlapping subcharts, each created at a different time, each possibly from a different source. You could see the CMs if you looked carefully enough. You could trace where different pieces had been assembled. This explained the copying pattern. Medieval cartographers were not creating from observation. They were assembling and combining pieces from existing maps. They were synthesizing, blending, creating new wholes from borrowed pieces with precision they could never have achieved on their own. Then came the impossible pattern. The accuracy was not uniform across the maps. Short-range accuracy, under 20 kilometers, was always poor, always significantly less precise. Long-range accuracy, exceeding 200 kilometers, was near 19th century standard. This is exactly what you would expect from copying a master map. You reproduce the long-range geometry perfectly because that is what is encoded in the original. But short-range local details, the corrections that come from seeing actual terrain, you cannot reproduce without being there, without walking the coast, without measuring with your own instruments. This pattern proves the portolan charts were not built from accumulated navigation data. They were built from copying an extraordinarily accurate source, and that source was the only thing that mattered. Everything else was just reproduction. But what were they copying? In 1987, researcher Scott Loomer conducted a revealing test. He took 26 surviving portolan charts. He tested them against 9 different mathematical map projections. Which projection best explained each chart's geometry? Which mathematical system had been used to create these maps? The answer was the Mercator projection. All 26 charts matched the Mercator projection. The problem is devastating. The Mercator projection was not invented until 1569. That is 300 years after the oldest portolan charts were created. The charts cannot use the Mercator projection because the Mercator projection did not exist when they were made. Yet their geometry is mathematically consistent with the Mercator projection. How is this possible? How do medieval maps use mathematics that had not been invented yet? Unless the source map used the Mercator projection, unless the portolan charts were not created in 1275 or 1300, but were copied from something far older, something created with knowledge and mathematical sophistication that should not have existed in the medieval world. Unless they were medieval reproductions of ancient maps, unless someone, at some point in history, had created maps using knowledge that European mathematics had forgotten. The Cortona Chart, dated to approximately 1300, shows Mediterranean coastlines in extraordinary detail. Among those details are specific ports and named harbors, real places, real trade routes. But here is the devastating problem. Some of these ports had silted up centuries before the Cortona Chart was supposedly drawn. They had been abandoned. They had vanished under sand and sediment, rendered unusable. How did a medieval mapmaker in 1300 know about a port that had been unusable for hundreds of years? Only if he was copying from a source that predated the silting, a source from an era when the ports were still functional, when ships could still dock there, when merchants still traded through them. In short, someone had recorded these ports when they still mattered. The prevailing theory is that portolan charts are copies of Byzantine maps. The Byzantines were heirs to Roman geographical knowledge. They had preserved libraries and maintained trade routes stretching from Europe to the Far East and beyond. They possessed older maps, older syntheses of geographical knowledge accumulated over centuries. When Constantinople fell to Ottoman conquest in 1453, much was lost forever. But before the fall, Byzantine maps circulated to Italian merchants. Venice had trading colonies in Byzantine territory. Genoese merchants had extensive contact with Constantinople. It is plausible that portolan charts represent the copying and preservation of Byzantine maps that preserved in turn the geographical knowledge of the Roman world. But this is speculation. The source maps do not survive. The original charts, if they existed, are lost. All we have are the copies, the mosaics, the evidence of their existence. Nicolai's conclusion, after exhaustive analysis, was this: the accumulated evidence, the statistical patterns, the geometric properties, all eliminate the possibility that portolan charts are original products of medieval nautical culture. They are copies. They preserve knowledge from older sources. The question of those sources, where they came from, how old they actually are, what knowledge they contained, remains scientifically unresolved. About 130 to 180 portolan charts survive from the medieval period. The Catalan Atlas of 1375, the Dulcet Chart of 1339, dozens of others in libraries across Europe and North America. Each one is carefully rendered on parchment. Each shows Mediterranean geography with remarkable precision. Each suggests medieval cartographers possessed source material whose origins cannot be fully explained. The real mystery is not whether these maps are possible. They exist. They have been studied. They are documented. The mystery is how medieval cartographers could access maps exhibiting Mercator projection properties, containing geographical accuracy exceeding their own technological capabilities, depicting ports that had silted up centuries before, appearing in such fully formed sophistication with no visible developmental stages and no visible sources. One answer is Byzantine preservation. Roman and Greek geographical knowledge survived in Constantinople, was copied, was preserved, was transmitted to Italian merchants, and was reproduced again and again by cartographers who did not fully understand their own sources. They were copying maps that were themselves copies, preserving patterns of accuracy they could not have created. But another question haunts the field. What if the portolan charts are much older than they appear? What if the parchment and materials were aged to appear medieval, but the maps themselves were created with ancient knowledge? What if the date of 1275 is not the date of creation, but the date of documentation, when these maps first appeared in historical records? Before that, they may have existed in secret. They may have been held in libraries. They may have been ancient before they were medieval. This is speculation. Yet it is speculation that Roel Nicolai's analysis lends credibility to. The mathematics does not lie. The accuracy cannot be explained by medieval methods. The Mercator projection properties cannot be explained by medieval knowledge. Something is missing from our understanding. The portolan charts still exist. You can see high-resolution images online. You can trace the coastlines they show. You can verify their accuracy against modern geography. You can see the mosaics overlap. You can see the seams between different source materials. You can see accumulated knowledge from different eras combined into something greater than the sum of its parts. And you can ask the question that Roel Nicolai left unanswered. Where did they come from? What source contained such perfect knowledge that it could be copied across 200 years and still maintain accuracy exceeding 19th century cartography? What civilization possessed Mercator projection mathematics in an era when European mathematics had forgotten it? What trade routes preserved this knowledge? What libraries held the originals? And where are they now? The scientific consensus is that the origin remains unresolved. The portolan charts are still not fully explained. They are monuments to knowledge that arrived fully formed in medieval Italy, were copied faithfully, were reproduced again and again across centuries, and the original knowledge from which they came has never been recovered. They represent a gap in history, a moment when medieval cartographers received something they did not create and preserved something they could not have invented. The real story is not that they show impossible knowledge. The real story is that we still do not know where that knowledge came from, and we may never fully know, because the sources are lost, the cartographers kept no records, and history has not yet explained what we can still see.